Hello, it's Joe Simhart here again. It's May 22nd, 2023, and someone asked me a question, or asked me to comment on crystals, like smudge sticks or sage, and pendulums, and, in keeping with whether these things are magical, effective, or just pseudoscience, or something else. So, yeah, we'll take a look at things. We have crystals like this, an amethyst, and pendulums. I don't really have a typical pendulum here, but I got this thing. It's an Australian Aboriginal bull roarer that I purchased in Australia. It can work like a pendulum, but it's mainly used when you spin it to ward off evil spirits in rituals. So it probably goes back, who knows, maybe 20, 30, 40,000 years in Aboriginal culture. Does it work? Well, it makes quite a bit of noise, so I imagine it would alert any kind of creatures, predators, enemies that you're there, and might prevent them from coming closer. As far as spirits are concerned, well, again, that's a cultural projection about whether spirits, devils, angels, listen to this kind of stuff. So the same thing I think can apply to crystals. These rocks are very prevalent and quite cheap in the general market, but when put into a New Age bookstore, for instance, in the 80s, where I could have purchased this from a rock dealer for 15 cents a pound or whatever, they would sell it for $1,500 or whatever they could put on it, especially if they could claim that this was magically infused with the life forces of the universe by some shaman that they met, in South America, and therefore it's a very special crystal. And well, you get the idea. In other words, it is now energized with incredible power, and you can, with your mind or with your prayer rituals, putting it into a proper place in the room according to feng shui or whatever, can increase the energy of this rock to clear the energy in your house, protect it from evil spirits, much like you might do with a bull roarer. But of course, this is noisy, and this doesn't make any noise at all, so take your pick. As far as the pendulum thing, I recall a case I had where a young woman was under the control of her music teacher, and he was using something called applied kinesiology, and basically what it is muscle testing, where you put pressure on a person's lifted arm, and you say something like mother, and if it collapses, well, they've got a weak spot relationship with their mother. Or if you say penicillin and it collapses, well, they have some problem with penicillin. So it's used as a diagnostic tool. And if the arm holds up, let's say my new boyfriend Frank, and it stays up there, well, you might have a good connection with Mr. Frank. I'm simplifying it, but basically, the way I got through to this young woman that this is subjective and can be manipulated by someone like a guru or her teacher, who, by the way, was sexually abusing her at the same time. She was 19, he was 45. Anyway, so, if you take something like this, a pendulum, and the literature says that you can train your pendulum to yes and no. So you think yes, 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 and you swing it this way, and you think no, 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 and you swing it this way. And, after a while, the pendulum understands what's negative and positive. And actually saw this in New Mexico. A woman was in front of me in an organic grocery store, and she had a small pendulum, and she was walking around and holding it on every piece of fruit or vegetable she bought to see if it was yes or no. And then she would pick the fruit depending on what the pendulum told her. Uh, this is also called, the swinging of a pendulum, something called radionics. I remember one guy, a psychic that believed in this kind of thing, had his little pendulum, and he had me hold up my fingers, and he would wave over my fingertips, and he says, "Can you feel that? Can you feel that?" And I really couldn't feel much of anything, and but he claimed that people can feel like electricity on their fingertips when the pendulum is going back and forth. So basically, it's kind of like a Ouija board, which is yes, yes, but this is yes, no. It can swing back and forth. So the investigations that have been done on pendulums is that unconsciously you're actually making it move without knowing it. And I'll put a link to the study of how this works, but there is something in the mechanism of the brain which is below your threshold of awareness, which is acting before you even make a choice. So that mechanism will begin to make this thing move according to whatever inner impulse you have, in what you might call your subconscious. But in any case, you are the actor. This thing is not acting independently of you. In the same sense, your belief system is the actor. This thing, this rock, is not acting independently of you. What will happen with people in this kind of new age experiential spiritual world is that they stop with the initial experience that they have, which might be positive. They might have some idea that this crystal energy works. They put it in the room and they find out that they've have a better relationship with their friend the next day, and they attribute it to this energy here. And any one of 1,000 coincidences that could take place the following day, they could attribute to the good energy in this rock. But how do you test that? Of course, this sort of thing has been tested, whether there is such a thing as pendulum power or bull roarer power. And in the end, the science or the real research shows that these things don't work as advertised. People don't get healed any more than by placebo, by magic rocks around their sickbed. If these things worked and you put them in hospitals, we would have very few beds filled in hospitals today. But obviously, it doesn't work. And you can almost go there with acupuncture. Acupuncture has a certain ancient system of stimulating nerve and muscle tissue and creating a flow of what they call energy around the body. But the real science behind it is unknown, and it basically is a belief system. It might have some minor beneficial effects for some people, reducing anxiety, reducing some pain, reducing headaches or whatever, but a lot of it is through the power of suggestion. I had gone to a acupuncture school once and was a guinea pig and allowing them to test my pulse and whatever. And the doctor there, a Chinese doctor with an MD, he instructed that class never to overvalue acupuncture. Be very careful. It treats things in a certain folksy way, and some people benefit. But if you see limits going on, you send that person, your client, immediately to a doctor to get a proper examination with labs and whatever. Don't think that acupuncture is going to prevent or take care of all that stuff. So, he was aware of the science behind it and the limitations in it, and he was a very ethical teacher of acupuncture. So the ethics, how do you get to the ethics of all this sort of thing? Well, let's look at the difference between, for instance, dowsing. You use these sticks that's shaped like a Y, and you can walk around to see if there's water or minerals or whatever else under the soil. It basically doesn't work, despite what dowsers tell you, that it works all the time. When you actually test it, it essentially fails most of the time to find what it says. If dowsing really worked, people that dig wells would use them all the time, and it's shown that there's better ways to find where water is than using a dowsing stick. However, if you compare it to something like a Geiger counter, which is measuring, or a metal detector, which is measuring something which is invisible to us, to our senses. We can't hear it, we can't see it, we can't smell it, we can't even touch it. But there is some energy, electricity going on, some magnetism going on, which is invisible to us, which is kind of an intermediary in cultural language to the spiritual world. Malicious animal magnetism, the magnetism, the magnetism that these rocks have to spiritual energies, so it's a kind of a metaphor. But there's a reality to that. I mean, Geiger counters actually measure radiation. There is a mechanism which has been proven through layers of reasoning and layers of testing to get to the point where this thing actually works for what it's intended to do. And the same thing with metal detectors. It works for what it's intended to do. Is this working for what it's intended to do when you claim that it has the metaphysical forces of the universe, the angelic energies or whatever you put into it, and you put it near a sick bed and it heals people? No, there's no evidence that it works like a Geiger counter or a metal detector. So what's essentially happening here is people get caught up in the immediate experience or feeling that something like this wards off evil spirits and stop there because their experience ratified it or somehow coincidentally made it seem real, like it was really happening. And they don't go any further into second level, third level testing the way science does to see if it worked in the way it claims to work. One thing that this sort of thing will do, if a whole culture, a tribe believes in it and believes in the powers of the shaman that wields the bull roarer to ward off energies, it will make the tribe more cohesive, will have a sense of faith that something good is going on, that they feel better protected. It lowers their anxiety. It gives them sort of faith in the culture of the group. And in a sense, it uplifts the unity of the group in some way, as long as this isn't overvalued. If a shaman or an Aboriginal medicine man, whatever they called them down there in those days, was waving this bull roarer to ward off the British and their bullets and guns, it's not going to work, and it didn't work. And, we had a devastation of Aboriginal culture. It couldn't even ward off the diseases that came with the British. And neither did any other magical rocks or stones or whatever they believed in work. One sneeze from someone from a British ship onto a tribe could cause an epidemic of flu that would kill half the tribe because they had no resistance, no antibodies for that kind of disease. And smallpox was another one that spread and killed off a lot of Aboriginal tribes without the invading culture making any effort whatsoever other than just being diseased. So essentially what you're looking at here is magical thinking, sympathetic magic, and the limits of what is intended in the cultural belief system, whether it's New Age with crystals or Aboriginal with the bull roarer, or the pendulum energy and measuring something positive and negative. Got to be careful with this stuff. Do not overvalue it. Cults and cult leaders will tend to overvalue this stuff. You will be spending a lot more money, a lot more time, a lot more energy in something which isn't culturally monitored very well. And you could be wasting a lot of time and avoiding real medical treatment or real investigation to see what's really going on out there when you're supposedly chasing spirits away with this thing. A lot of fun to play with. You really got to spin it hard to make it roar, but it does work. Okay. Thank you for listening. That's my little spiel right now on the idea of whether crystals work. They have some minor effect to reduce anxiety, but do not overvalue them, thinking that they're going to work as advertised in a New Age bookstore. Thank you. Have a good day.